Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Tonight I wanted to talk to you about the latest updates when it comes to Gaza and the ceasefire, the latest action coming from the Palestinian resistance, the unprecedented attacks coming from Yemen's Ansarullah against the F-18 fighter jet of the United States Air Force, taking it down and expelling a US aircraft carrier, alongside more advice coming from Israel to attack Iran. And I'm going to finish off with the threats coming from Turkey against Israel and the latest talks about the new Syrian army. I'm going to start off with Gaza. Today, Israel diversified its attacks on the civilians in at least 4 locations in Gaza: Rafah, Al-Nusayrat refugee camp, Al-Bureij refugee camp, Jabalia, and other parts of North Gaza. In total, they killed at least 24 people, including at least 7 children. They're continuing these attacks on the innocent civilians because the international community is inactive when it comes to Israel, therefore enabling them to continue with this genocide. However, that's not stopping the Palestinian resistance. In the past couple of days, the Palestinian resistance has been escalating and increasing its attacks on the genocide soldiers inside of Gaza. And today, both the armed wing of Hamas, the Al-Qassam brigades, and the armed wing of the PIJ, Sarai al-Quds or Al-Quds brigades, released videos where they were targeting Israeli genocide soldiers inside of Gaza. And I wanted to share some of them with you.
Bismillah. اضرب يا بسم الله.
Now, these attacks, they were diversified attacks. There was a targeting of a Merkava tank, a troop carrier, the sniping of a soldier. There was a side bomb against a walking group of Israeli genocide soldiers inside of Gaza. And the last one was against a force hiding inside a house inside of Jabalia. All of these actions coming from the Palestinian resistance, including a following video that was released by Sarai al-Quds, they indicate that they have obtained the sufficient level of intelligence from Israel and its army inside of Gaza. The video that was released later on by the Sarai al-Quds group, the armed wing of the PIJ, they showed footage that's coming from a drone about the positioning of all of the Israeli troops inside of the northern part of Gaza. So the Palestinian resistance, despite all of this damage and despite the fact that almost the entire area of a refugee camp such as Jabalia, for example, like many other refugee camps, especially in the north, completely destroyed, the Palestinian resistance is still able to function properly, gather intelligence about the genocide soldiers, and target them specifically in all of those areas. And in many cases, Israel is still ignoring this news coming from Gaza. They don't publish this in Israeli media. The only thing that they said was 4 were wounded in an explosion in one of their troop carriers inside of Gaza. Nothing else. They didn't mention anything about their tanks, about some of their soldiers being sniped, and all of the other attacks. And another troop carrier was targeted by Sarai al-Quds. So it's like they are completely banning all of this information from reaching their citizens primarily inside of Gaza, so that they don't have more uproar and protests against the government for sending these people to die for no reason, because they have not achieved any of their objectives inside of Gaza, and it doesn't look like they will be achieving them at any point. Israel will not be achieving any of their objectives in Gaza. They might be able to achieve some of their objectives, primarily or solely the release of the Israeli prisoners of war, so long as they have a ceasefire with the Palestinian resistance and there is an agreement to completely end the war. Otherwise, they will not be eliminating the resistance, and they will not be making sure that Gaza never poses a threat on Israel again. These things will not be happening inside of Gaza. And now more information is being published in Israel that there's something delaying the ceasefire when it comes to the third phase of the ceasefire. Clearly, Benjamin Netanyahu is now more open to the idea of a full ceasefire, hence why the delay is being caused by the third phase details. Secondly, this is indicating that the Palestinian resistance is still insisting on the full conditions of the ceasefire, which would end with completely ending the war and the release of probably all of the Palestinian prisoners, and keeping the heaviest Israeli prisoners, including the commanders from the Israeli army, held up until the last second. Israel is trying to maximize the numbers that would be released in the first phase, but the Palestinian resistance still telling them, no, that's not going to happen, and we will continue to hold them up until we get all of our details, all of our demands when it comes to Gaza. Which leads me to the second point that I wanted to talk to you about. Yemen has been conducting massive attacks against Israel in the past couple of days. And today was a very significant attack coming from Ansarullah, where they took down an F-18 fighter jet that belongs to the United States Air Force, and they forced the USS Harry S. Truman to retreat. And they said that they thwarted an attack that was coordinated between the United States and the UK against Yemen by their actions. This is the third time that Ansarullah in Yemen expelled an aircraft carrier from the United States. The United States positions its aircraft carriers in the region to intimidate, bully, and terrorize the people of the nation and act like, well, they can do whatever they want without any sort of repercussions. But Ansarullah have proven them wrong time after time. They took down this fighter jet, and they also targeted the aircraft carrier with at least 17 cruise missiles and drones. And they're not stopping. More threats coming from the United States. They carried an attack, the Genocide Coalition, yesterday on Yemen. And we had this now only hours after they threatened to retaliate with increased levels. And they released a statement, their military spokesperson, Yahya Sari', again beginning with the assistance of the Palestinian people who are oppressed and their fighters, and as a response to the US-UK aggression, British-American aggression on our country, we succeeded in thwarting an attack by the United States and the UK as we targeted the USS Harry S. Truman and several other destroyers simultaneously with the beginning of the attack on Yemen. 8 cruise missiles and 17 drones were sent during the attack. We took down an F-18 fighter jet, and all of the fighter jets retreated alongside the US aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman. Again, the third time after Eisenhower and Lincoln, now Truman, the aircraft carrier, is retreating only because of the attacks coming from Ansarullah against Israel, against the US, against the UK, the Genocide Coalition. Nothing is stopping them, and they're continuing. And these people, like they said the other day, they don't fear anyone but God, and they're doing this as a moral thing, as a religious thing to support the Palestinian people. No aircraft carrier, no genocide coalition will scare them. The thing that they would be worried of is not supporting the Palestinian people without any calculation, without any financial calculation, without any fear of repercussions, without any fear of anything, like many other countries are doing. Yemen is a different example from all of the other countries, really, the level of dedication that they have, the level of sacrifice. And again, they highlight the fact that no one has been able to break the resistance supporting front. You might have had a ceasefire with Lebanon. We're not stopping. We're still continuing to attack. However, what is Israel saying? Well, yesterday I shared with you an article in Israel that said Yemen is schooling us. We have no answer against them. But Benjamin Netanyahu, again, like with the Israeli philosophy, genocide after genocide after genocide. This is what Israel does. They don't understand anything but force, and they always attack other nations. So from an Israeli perspective, what hasn't been achieved by force will be achieved with more force. This is the understanding of Israel. This is their philosophy. But not everyone in Israel is agreeing that, no, it should be Yemen that we need to target. No, some of them are saying, no, actually, we need to target Iran. Forget about Yemen, let's target Iran. And who's saying that? The head of the Mossad, Dudi Barnea, saying, attack Iran, not the Houthis, recommending in discussions held in recent days as a response to the attacks from Ansarullah. Netanyahu also said, just as we acted forcefully against the terrorist arms of Iran's evil axis, so we will act against the Houthis. Why is the head of the Mossad saying we need to attack Iran? And why is Netanyahu likely not to agree with him, likely to choose the IDF intel over Mossad on Houthis? A couple of reasons. Number one, Netanyahu fears the response from Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu knows that Iran is a strong country, strong air defense, and very strong attack capabilities, much more than Ansarullah. Ansarullah showed that they have things very similar to Iran when it comes to hypersonic missiles and the way they landed. They did resemble the True Promise 2 attack on Israel coming from Iran. But Iran is a bigger threat to deal with. In addition, the IDF, from their perspective, and that's why they gave this advice to Benjamin Netanyahu, they would be criticized the most if Israel attacks Iran and then is unable to defend itself against a counterattack from Iran. So the IDF is concerned about defense and offense as well, and that's why Benjamin Netanyahu is aligning with them. Plus, the man was shaking when Iran was attacking them. He had the statement, he was shaking like this. However, the head of the Mossad, from his perspective, he knows where this is all coming from. Although Iran constantly says, we actually have no proxies, these people act independently. Yes, we support, but that doesn't mean we tell them what to do. And again, clearly, we have different types of stances when it comes to the resistance fronts based on the priority. In Lebanon, their priority was to have a ceasefire. In Yemen, it's a different priority. In other regions as well. And Iran has its own priorities as well when it comes to the attack. Also, Benjamin Netanyahu thinks that Iran's response will be delayed for a longer period of time. His assumption is Iran is in no rush. He's thinking that Iran, no, they consider the bigger picture. They're in no rush to attack, and we have a bit more time against them. This is potentially the false sense of confidence that Iran wanted to instill in Israel. That's assuming that Benjamin Netanyahu is truthful, by the way. Him assuming that, no, Iran, we have time, but Yemen, they're attacking us every day. Whereas Iran is not attacking us every day. So the head of the Mossad wants to target them directly. Netanyahu is now aligning more with the IDF suggestions based on these reports again coming from Israel. So things are indeed heating up, but when it comes to Ansarullah, nothing is stopping them. Absolutely nothing is stopping Ansarullah from their attacks, and they're continuing day after day. Which leads us to Syria. Israel is worried from what's happening inside of Syria, especially when it comes to Turkey. So there was this report in the Israeli Broadcasting Authority saying that Israel fears Erdogan will launch a military operation against the Kurds in Syria. Israeli officials said that they are looking how to assist the Kurds in non-military ways. A cabinet meeting was held on Tuesday at the Northern Command, which discussed this scenario among other things. This is, again, another proof that Israel is aligned with the United States, siding with the SDF against both the Syrian National Army and the new interim government backed by Turkey. And Israel said previously many times that they have a strong interest in having a strong SDF in the northeastern part so that they can potentially have a partnership with them at some point, an official partnership, because Israel would be interested in having a divided Syria. But the interim government in Syria and Turkey, they have other plans. And to further confirm how both the United States and Israel are linked when it comes to the SDF, so the United States as well, saying Turkey is preparing for a ground invasion. And we have seen indications of preparations. Many forces are on the borders now between Turkey and the northeastern part of Syria. Turkey is carrying out many airstrikes, and it's only been a case of the interim government forces backed by Turkey advancing in SDF areas. What does that indicate? That indicates that the talks about a potential deal with the SDF without confrontation hasn't really been that successful. There have been certain talks, but it hasn't been successful primarily because the SDF is backed by the United States. And the United States is giving them, more confidence. No, fight, go ahead, and we will support you. But that support isn't that sufficient from the United States. The United States sent more deployment from the Iraqi borders to northeast Syria. But again, they're not actively fighting on behalf of the SDF, unlike the other side. The other side, you have the SNA, the Syrian National Army, and armed groups that now form the interim government. That's soon going to be the Ministry of Defense, backed by Turkey, on their way to control everything when it comes to northeast Syria. And that's coming in line with exactly what the leader of the opposition, and now the de facto leader, really, of Syria, Ahmad al-Shara, or al-Julani. He had a meeting with all of the armed groups inside of Syria, saying that there should be no weapons outside the authority of the state. He met with HTS, he met with SNA, the Free Syrian Army, all of the armed groups, saying all of you need to hand in your weapons to the state. We're no longer in the state of revolution. Now we're in the state of building the country, and we need to have a Ministry of Defense. And that includes every single armed group inside of Syria, including the YPG and the SDF and any other armed group inside of Syria. Why is he doing that? To establish a Ministry of Defense that would be solid and bring everyone together. And he is also reaching out for ex-Assad army people who served in the previous Syrian army but left the army, meaning that he is opening the door to members of the previous army to also participate. Again, showing that they are not actually looking for revenge against anyone, and they're looking to build a new Syria. And nor has he only spoken to people who were before in the army. He actually met with the previous prime minister of Syria under Bashar al-Assad. His name was Farouk al-Shara. He met with Farouk al-Shara, and he also offered to have dealings with him, to have they're planning to have this national meeting for all political parties inside of Syria to deal with the future of Syria. We also had meetings with senior figures in Lebanon as well, saying that we shouldn't be focusing on issues that we had 1,400 years ago. And even with all of the movements in Lebanon, we won't be dealing with them, hinting to Hezbollah, with an approach of vengeance. We respect Lebanon's sovereignty, and we're looking to build strategic relationship with Lebanon and move on and build a better future for our people and the people of the region. So there's definitely a tone that is different when it comes to the new Syrian government, but it's not coming without challenges. Now, to counter these challenges, Syria needs support, and their support is going to absolutely come from Turkey. Today, Hakan Fidan, who was the head of the Turkish intelligence for a very long time, a very powerful figure in Turkey, and now he is the foreign minister, he went to Syria to meet with Ashara simultaneously just after the meeting that Ashara had with all of the armed groups to tell them that's it, no more weapons outside the hands of the state, everything is in the hands of the country. And most of them agreed, including HTS, who led this campaign. He came to Turkey and he spoke with him about the current affairs, about the strategic partnership and the defense partnership between Turkey and Syria. They haven't yet spoken about the defense pact, but it appears to be where things are headed, having a defense pact between Turkey and Syria. But Hakan Fidan didn't only say, "Oh, we have to, respect the territorial integrity of Syria, the whole country. Syria's territorial integrity is non-negotiable." He also sent a message to Israel. They know what Israel is doing, and they know that Israel is capitalizing on the situation, illegally expanding its occupation inside of Syria, using the vacuum, trying to capitalize on it, cast doubt on the new Syrian government, and saying that, no, we actually might see multiple Syrians. They speak what they would like to see, although they would be disappointed to see that things are actually moving the opposite way. Not only because, the Syrians and the whole world is viewing things in a different manner when it comes to Israel inside of Syria. On the ground, they're losing. On the ground, Israel is having these expansions inside of Syria to create the illusion that we're here to stay. However, Israel will be forced to retreat from all of these areas, and also potentially the Golan Heights that they've been occupying for 57 years before. How will that happen? That will happen if they would be faced with a country that has some force with a significant backing, such as the case with Turkey, because Israel previously did not retreat unless there was a case of a political settlement or an armed conflict that led to a political settlement, such as the cases with Gaza, with Lebanon, and with Egypt as well. But the Turkish foreign minister, he also sent a message to Israel saying that it's absolutely unacceptable to tolerate Israel exploiting the current situation to seize Syrian territories, referring to Israel's recent attacks on Syrian lands after the fall of the Ba'ath Party. So there's more talks coming from Turkey in relation to Israel. This is not the first statement. There were multiple statements from senior figures inside of Turkey in relation to what Israel is doing inside of Syria. And the thing that Israel doesn't really either understand or is not really projecting properly is where things would go. Now, no one knows for sure where things are going inside of Syria. Things are moving really fast. Things are very much it's like a spider web to many people, really, what's happening inside of Syria. But on the ground, there hasn't been a bloody move in power or transition of power. there hasn't been the sectarian violence that everyone is threatening from. There hasn't been a civil war, and there hasn't been any counterattack coming from the previous Assad government. As a matter of fact, the people who left the government or left the army, many of them are now looking to join the new army inside of Syria and also be part of the institutions when it comes to Syria. And judging by the United States and how it's actually dealing with SDF in the Northeast, it doesn't appear to be that the United States, despite its statements and despite its intimidation attempts, it doesn't appear to be that they're going to support the SDF with anything significant to turn things around when it comes to Syria. Very similar to the tone that Donald Trump had when it comes to Syria. We're not looking to send more forces. He mentioned the fact that he previously withdrew forces from Syria. He praised Erdogan, although saying, he did an unfriendly move inside of Syria, but nothing indicates that they are preparing for something big to go head to head with the new Syrian interim government, at least by force, or by US forces actively fighting side by side with the SDF, or with anything more significant than that. Because on the ground, the United States has the capacity to support the SDF. And if they have the capacity to support the SDF, which in return serves the purpose of the United States, the main purpose of the United States and Israel, to divide Syria, and people need to remember, Syria was divided de facto under Assad for the past 13 years, approximately. Syria had an SDF. They controlled areas much larger than this area. HTS controlled an area in the north, and the rest were controlled by the Assad government. That was the norm inside of Syria. Syria was de facto divided. What's happening now is Syria is going to be more united. More Syrian territories are under the Syrian government. More territories that are under the control of the SDF that's backed by the United States are being brought back to the state of Syria. All of these don't fall in the interests of Israel and the United States. Now, at one point, the United States thought of using the leverage of ISIS prisoners inside SDF-controlled territories, because SDF controls areas like Al-Raqqa, for example, which was a main hub of ISIS. They still have prisons in the northeast of Syria, and they're full of ISIS fighters. ISIS fighters who were previously released under who? Under Assad's government. That's for people who don't know. They were thinking at one point to release them to start to cause havoc and have an excuse of ISIS and go and fight them or deploy more forces inside of Syria. However, even with that, and despite the fact that they had an attack on what they claimed to be an ISIS hub all of a sudden in northeast Syria, that doesn't seem to be the case. Why? Because there's more talks coming from the new interim government of Syria to say that we will be securing these prisons. So you can't use the excuse of SDF securing prisons of ISIS fighters for your presence inside of Syria. Because at the end of the day, the purpose of the US presence in Syria is primarily to divide Syria and control its natural resources and keep the countries of the region divided, in line with the big plan to start dividing the region even more, like the vision that they had with the new Middle East plan. But the fact that they are negotiating with the new Syrian interim government how they would secure these prisons indicates that the United States would slowly be taking away their support of the SDF, and that's why Israel is worried. Israel does not want that. Israel always viewed the SDF and the PKK and the YPG as assets, because to them, they use them to attack Turkey. Even when the Marmara event happened with the Freedom Flotilla, after Turkey sent the Marmara ship to Gaza, that was attacked, and several Israeli soldiers were killed as well, but also 9 Turkish people were killed as well. Israel used some of the underground PKK movements inside of Turkey to launch missiles inside of Turkish territory, which wasn't an attack very common to some of the PKK movements inside of Turkey, by the way. Their attacks took different shapes inside of Turkey. But Israel has very strong connections with them. And likewise, they wanted to nurture this relationship with them inside of Syria, but they couldn't do it without US participation. They don't have the geographical advantage. Their only geographical advantage is the occupied Golan Heights and a further expansion from the Golan Heights using the vacuum created by the Assad forces fleeing and also Russia removing some of its forces in the region. But when it comes to the Northeast, they're fully reliant on the United States, which is saying that, no, actually, I might actually not be that interested in directly participating. Similarly with the situation with Iran, like what the United States told Israel at the time, we will help you defend yourself, but we won't fight with you. We won't attack Iran with you. And when they helped them defend against the first attack back in April from Iran, when the US helped Israel, Joe Biden at the time told them, you go to win, take the win. The defense minister at the time in the United States, he told Israel also, we will not be participating in an attack. The foreign minister at the time, Israel Katz, when he met with the foreign ministers of Britain and France, he told them, we expect you to be participating with us on any upcoming attack in Iran. They shrugged him off. And as a matter of fact, the French foreign minister took it as an offense. And he later had criticism as well. So all of these things indicate that although there are shared interests inside of Syria, outside of Syria itself, from other countries, these interests do not necessarily align with each other, even when it comes to very strong allies such as the United States and Israel. Because the strongest alliance that we have in Syria today is the alliance between the Syrian interim government and Turkey. Even other armed groups, they were supported by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. There were multiple opposition armed groups. Many of them were supported by different countries, but the bigger forces were supported by Turkey. Those who are supported or were supported up until the last minute by countries, for example, like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, they will no longer have a say. Although these countries, or some countries, are trying to start something to provoke tensions inside of Syria. But the fact that the new Syrian interim government is having this new approach when it comes to inclusivity, openness, a lack of revenge, opening channels with previous foes who they used to fight for many years, like Iran and Hezbollah as well. All of these things indicate that it will be more difficult for primarily the United States and Israel to come up with a civil war that will be bloody in Syria. However, things are evolving, and every day we have new things when it comes to Syria. And of course, we will be covering all of it in the next coming weeks. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this video. I hope I added some beneficial information for you, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone.